Tirant Blanch published in 1490 in Valencia 2 years before Columbus got lost on his way to India. Today is considered the most important work of Catalan language and literature. Even the author of Don Quixote, Miguel de Cervantes, was influenced by this epic and even mentions it in Don Quixote, calling it the best book in the world. So in this video, I'll summarize it for you and tell you some of its themes and its importance in Catalonia and Catalan literature, but also in European history, especially the fall of Constantinople in 15th century. Mario Vargas Llosa, whose novel On Julia and the Scriptwriter I discussed here, considers Tirant Blanch a masterpiece of Western literature. There's also a motion picture based on the epic released in 2006 that mainly focuses on the last part of the novel, titled Tirant Blanch, and also the Maidens Conspiracy. But first, let me answer a few basic questions. Who is the author? Joan Martorell lived between 1410 and 1465, was a knight from the city of Valencia, today northern Spain. By the time it was part of the Kingdom of Aragon. Martorell died before he could finish the novels, so his friend Mate Joan de Galba completed it and published it in 1490. Incidentally, on November 20, so exactly 531 years ago. Now let me summarize the plot for you. The story begins in England, where the Earl of Warwick, upon visiting the Holy Land in Palestine, decides to live a simple life and away from wealth and politics. This perhaps is the author's towards the end of his own military life. But when the Muslim Moors invade England, he has no choice but to fight them. This puts him in spotlight. But again, he refuses wealth and power and returns to his hermetic life. Sometime later, a wedding feast in England invites all the knights from around Europe. A sleepy young knight from Brittany in modern-day France, Tirant Blanch, arrives in England. On the way, he falls asleep and by chance he meets the hermit who teaches him about chivalry. But he also inspires him to be a great Christian. This chance encounter has a huge influence on the young man. At the wedding feast, there are also many contests among different European knights to show their skills, strength, bravery, and chivalry. Tirant manages to defeat all other knights and win all the contests. He is named Best Knight in Europe, like a Footballer of the Year kind of honor. Soon his fame grows and he travels to other parts of Europe and wins all the contests, like the Champions League of the day. But he also remembers his encounter with the hermit who told him to be a true knight, one must defend the Christendom against the Moors and the Turks. So Tirant dedicates himself in the service of kings and emperors. Today, best athletes work for their sponsors. In those days, kings had all the cash. First, he fights for the King of France, and then later he finds himself at the service of the Emperor of Constantinople, or modern-day Istanbul, where he fights against the Turks. While there, he falls in love with the princess Carmesena, the daughter of Byzantine Emperor. A really beautiful scene is when he confesses his love for her. Being a chivalrous knight, he can't just say it to her bluntly, so he does something very clever. He gives the princess a picture saying that it is his lover's photo, but tells the princess not to look at the photo until he's gone. The princess returns to her room to see whose photo it is and notices it's a mirror. She realizes that Tirant is in love with her. Of course, she's a Greek princess and he's a military man from unknown family line in Brittany, so they're worlds apart. Also remember that women in those days didn't marry down. They always married up or their equals. She gives Tirant a cold shoulder. Tirant feels insulted, so he threatens to commit suicide unless the princess accepts him as a lover. It's a bit dramatic, but it works. Princess Carmesena apologizes before Tirant goes through his suicide attempt. I wonder if this trick works today. But Tirant, being a soldier, can't sit home and chase princesses all the time. When the Muslim Moors attack the Byzantine territories, Tirant is given the captain's armband to defend the empire. He fights many battles, a few defeats, but many more victories. Being a Latin man, the only battle he's desperate to win is the princess. Once in his attempt to enter her chamber through a window, he breaks his leg, which is quite funny. But this couldn't be at the worst time. The enemy's attack and the greatest the greatest knight in Europe is injured. He can't do anything about it. When he recovers, he's called to fight the Moors of North Africa, and there he converts many Muslims to Christianity, thanks to being very handsome. So now he uses his looks to win hearts and minds. At one point, he finds himself shipwrecked and loses his clothes. So he goes commando and exposing his perfect body, which wins the heart of a very powerful woman. And a few more battles and more victories for Tirant. He restores the power of the Greeks over the Turks and Moors. The Byzantine Empire is fully restored. The only victory for him is left to return to his princess, but the ending is a bit too tragic here. If you don't want the spoiler, please mute the audio until the curtain is lifted. One day, as Tirant is walking along a river, he feels a sharp pain in his sight. Doctors are called, but nobody can help. The greatest knight in Europe is dead. The news spreads, everyone weeps. The saddest scene is when Princess Carmesena notices the gloom faces and she innocently asks what's happened. They tell her the tragic news. She is speechless. Grief-stricken, she too dies, and so does the emperor. That's the end. The Christian empire is restored, but the greatest knight, the princess, and emperor are all dead. Wow, what an ending. So this ending alone was a clear break from the previous chivalric tales and a beginning for a more realistic novels. What is the story based on? Martorell, the author, claims that the original story was in English, that was first translated to Portuguese, and he in turn translated to Valencian Catalan. But no English or Portuguese original has been found, therefore it's safe to conclude that the original was written in Catalan while partly incorporated elements of English chivalric tale, titled The Guy of Warwick. Just as I discussed in the video about the Georgian national epic, The Knight in Panther Skins, in which the author, Shota Rustaveli, claims that he wrote a Persian tale in Georgian language. Even Cervantes, the author of Don Quixote, claimed Cid Hamed Benengeli, an Arab Muslim historian, to be the real author of Don Quixote. But why these great authors spent years writing those great books yet still claim it was written by someone else? One reason could be that exotic stories from afar is more enticing. Another reason could be political, not to annoy their kings or rulers or even risk their social status or jobs. Martorell was a well-known knight, so he didn't want to be an author of a novel with some steamy erotic sex scenes. The Catholic Inquisition was brewing in Spain at the time, and he didn't want to rock the boat with some angry Catholic priests chasing him. It's no wonder that it was published after the author's death. I should point out that Martorell wrote the bulk of it, but it was completed and published by his friend, Mate Joan de Galba. Most scholars believe Tirant le Blanc story is also based on the adventures of a real person, a Catalan knight, Roger de Flor, who fought alongside the Greeks against the Turks in Constantinople. So it's a composite of historical events and fiction. Now the second question, why did he write it? The main reason I think is to tell an alternative history. Constantinople or the Byzantine Empire fell to the Ottoman Turks in 1453, which created a shockwave around Christian Europe. So this tale is an attempt to tell an alternative version of history in which the Christians, mainly Greeks, defeat the Turks, not the other way around. The text gives a strong religious conviction on the part of the author as he rejoices when enemies of Christians, mainly Turks and Moors, are crushed by the Christian Greeks. Throughout the story, Christianity is a very important element. So in my opinion, the author wrote this to emotionally cope with the loss of Byzantine Empire to the Muslim Turks. Generals and priests at the time, however, reacted in a more brutal way to this event. At the time, the Spanish Inquisition was in full swing, in which Jews and Muslims are forcefully converted to Christianity or completely banished, which may have been triggered by the loss of Constantinople, a huge symbolic blow to the Christians. So the Spanish Inquisition was how the angry Catholic priests reacted to the defeat of Constantinople, and Tirant le Blanc was Martorell's reaction. One we condemn today as the most barbaric event in history, and the other we celebrate as the most wonderful work of literature. That's why fiction is therapeutic when people suffer psychologically. This goes very deep. Stories heal and console us in times of hardship. So Tirant le Blanc is like Homer's Iliad, in which the Greeks defeat the Trojans, which in reality may have been the reverse. We tell ourselves stories to console ourselves. In fact, many national epics around the world were written once a great empire or civilization had fallen. Ferdowsi's Shahnameh in a way laments the fall of Persian Empire. The Kalevala by Elias Lönnrot was written when Finland fell to the Russians. The same with the Polish national epic Pantadeusz, written after Poland was defeated by the Russians. So Tirant le Blanc laments the end of Byzantine Empire by giving it a positive twist for the Christians. Okay, now let me compare to the greatest novel in history. Cervantes had read Tirant Blanch before writing his own masterpiece, Don Quixote, which today is considered the most important novel in the West. In fact, Cervantes even mentions in Don Quixote saying that Tirant Blanch is the best book in the world. One can even say that Don Quixote would not have been possible without Tirant Blanch, because it was the first of its kind in that it turned cheesy chivalric tales into a serious work of literature, with its realism, comedy, and depth of characters. There are a few differences between the two works. Let's start with each author's claim about the sources of their stories. Martorell claims Tirant Blanch's story originally came from the north, i.e. England, while 100 years later, Cervantes claims Don Quixote was written by an Arab, so the tale came from the south, i.e. North Africa. I guess the reason for that has to do with the purpose of writing each tale. Tirant is a story about the defense of Christian world against the Muslims, which is quite a serious subject, so he places its source in England and France. While Don Quixote takes a whole different approach, it mostly makes fun of chivalric tales. It pokes fun at knights and knighthood culture. Tirant does have many funny scenes, but Don Quixote goes to town with it as it is about a man who has gone mad and pretends to be a knight, in which he fights imaginary enemies like windmills as if they are giants. Tirant Blanch learned chivalry from other knights, but Don Quixote learned chivalry from books. It's important because Cervantes certainly did learn his craft from Tirant Blanch, a book that was published years before he was born. So what is so unique about Tirant? Two things stand out in this work: its realism and comedy. It's very distinct from other chivalric tales of that period, and it doesn't deal too much with idealized romance, but more about real life, especially in describing its love and sex scenes, which some have criticized for being too indecent. Tirant Blanch, the main hero, which incidentally means white knight, despite being the bravest, cleverest, and strongest knight, he's also very human, with genuine feelings of anger, resentment, fear of rejection, and eagerness to be a better person. Despite many coincidences and exaggerated events, the story is more or less told with realistic details about warfare, which the author must have drawn heavily on his own war experience and military adventures. Some people even suggest that the author wrote this to poke fun at chivalry, and this became more apparent in Don Quixote. So you can't have the comedy of Don Quixote without the satire of Tirant Blanch. For example, in one particular scene, Tirant asks his lover, Princess Carmesena, to gift him her undershirt. While confused, she agrees. Tirant wears it on top of his armor. When the emperor notices the ridiculous attire, he asks him what it is. Tirant says, "If you knew its power, you would be astonished." Another element of satire is how the author juxtaposes the battle for Constantinople and the quest for the princess as almost the same. The princess is the city and the city is the princess. Having sex with her or touching different parts of her body is like conquering different parts of the empire. According to Montserrat Pera in her article Performing Knighthood, the hero Tirant Blanch in drag. The only time he is seriously injured is not in a battle but fleeing the princess's room, which is ironically funny. Nobody can injure him except his burning sexual desire, i.e. climbing down his lover's window. Now here's a question: what is so Catalan about it? Well, unknown to most people, it's huge in Catalonia as well as in Spain and Spanish-speaking world. It's the first and the most important work of Catalan literature, so rightly considered the national epic of Catalan people. Why? Obviously the language. It was written in Valencian language, which is dialect of Catalan, so Tirant Blanch revived the Catalan language and literature. While researching, I also learned a shocking fact. General Franco banned Catalan language use in schools and government until his death in 1975. Only Castilian Spanish was allowed. But is there a Catalan spirit in this tale? Tirant, despite being a Breton French, is in fact a Catalan man. He is mostly practical in his approach, but also passionate, madly brave, and strangely eccentric. Princess Carmesena demands two things from Tirant to have: wisdom and bravery. Wisdom in how to strategize battles, rule over people, and manage the world. In his mission to North Africa, he uses his charm to convert people to Christianity without a fight. He's also brave and takes many risks. According to Wikipedia, Catalan people are known for two things: sene, which means practical wisdom or pragmatism, and rocha, which means eccentricity. Pragmatism allowed Catalonia to prosper and now considered the wealthiest region of Spain. Catalans are also known for being very eccentric or even sometimes mad. Two famous Catalans, the artist Salvador Dali and architect Antonio Gaudi, are good examples of this eccentricity. So Tirant Blanch runs very deep among the Catalan people. I personally think Tirant LeBlanc was not given enough credit for its impact on future writers. I hadn't even heard of it until a few months ago. A kind viewer, Andrew Dunbar, commented on my video on the Georgian national epic, so I got intrigued. So thank you, Andrew, for bringing this to my attention. If Don Quixote is the first modern novel, Tirant LeBlanc is its father or mother who gave birth to it. So it's a true pioneer. Without Tirant, Don Quixote would not have been possible in my humble opinion. What do you think? Would love to hear your opinions.